Da sier jeg velkommen til vårt første arrangement her ved Arendalsuka 2023. Mitt navn er Øyvind Eikrem. Jeg er politisk nestleder i Norgesdemokratene. Og vi skal i dag gjennomføre et arrangement hvor vi har en samtale med forfatter og AFD-politiker Stefan Korte. Boka hans står her fremme. Den er også til salgs etterpå. Og vi kommer til å åpne etter at Stefan og jeg har samtalt en liten times tid for spørsmål og kommentarer fra salen. Men aller først så ønsker vi partileder Geir Ugland Jakobsen å innlede litt og si litt om hva vi gjør her på Arendalsuka og så videre. Så vær så god, Geir.
Hei alle sammen. De fleste kjenner meg kanskje. Jeg heter Geir Ugland Jakobsen og er partileder for Norgesdemokratene. Det eneste partiet som setter Norge først i alle sammenhenger. Og det er jo litt deilig å ha monopol på det, så å si. Og vi har partier som ligner litt, men som ikke er fullt overlappende på noen måte. Vi er kjent for å være etterrettelige, og vi er kjent for å være modige, og det skal vi fortsette å være. Og vi skal ha alle kort på bordet, slik at folk blir fullt informert, og demokratiet får virke. Jeg skal holde meg litt til norsk før jeg slår over på engelsk. Er det noen i salen som ikke snakker norsk? Are there anybody here that don't speak Norwegian? One? Okay. Hello. Then I switch to English. I'm very pleased to open the first event for Norgesdemokratene here in Arendal. We are here to make ourselves visible and also to pick up some impulses from the audience that now are in town. If we are lucky, we are also having some attention from the media, but as you all know, we are under a media embargo. That is that they will almost for any price not give us attention because they have no arguments for against putting Norway first. So they choose the second most efficient way to take us away, and that is to ignore us. Unfortunately, but we know that we will reach our goals sooner or later. But it will take a little more time than if compared to if we would have the same attention as other parties, established parties. We are probably the greatest threat to the establishment today, and I know by information from some of the established parties that we are the nightmare of many established parties and politicians. Because we can pose the right questions and we can make the right suggestions in the parliament if we ever get there. So then, Stefan, I'm very pleased to have you here. We are indeed. Stefan, as Øyvind said, he is an author, and he has also many years with AFD, Alternative for Deutschland, the political party which is blooming at the moment in Germany. We are pleased to see that.
Me too.
Very, very good. Stefan primarily worked with foreign affairs, foreign issues for the party for some years, and has followed the party, AFD, and on its way up. And that's very interesting for us to hear a little about that, if there's time for that. But most of all, he will today talk about the content of his book and geopolitical issues. And that is what I'll call in Norwegian verdenspolitikk, and how the tectonic plates are moving at the moment politically and what's really happening, because almost nobody really understands in full what is happening now, and I'm very eager to hear what Stefan has to say about that. So thank you, Stefan. Then I just wish you luck and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we'll try to use that microphone.
Just talk normally.
All right, I think it should be enough.
It's better for the cameras also.
Okay. Skal jeg sitte på den, tenker du?
Ja.
Jeg sitter på den. Well, I hope that the microphone is able to hear us.
I think so, I think so.
And we'll just carry on with the second part of today after the introduction by the party chairman. Thank you, Geir, for your words. And as I already mentioned, Stefan, you have recently published this book, which is called Geopolitical Upheaval in Eastern Europe, Background and Significance for the Continent, the German View. And it's published by Legatum Publishing. And we have some copies here for sale. It's also published in German, if there are any German speakers, or people who want to fresh up on their school German from the old days. So they can buy an English version and a German version. Indeed. So I have prepared some questions for you.
That is good.
So I think that we should just start with them.
Yeah, I hope I can answer them.
Yes, we'll see. We'll see. And afterwards, as I already mentioned, we will also open up for comments from the audience and questions. So we'll do it like this. But let me just start, Stefan. If
we start after...
You have turned it off.
I turned the volume down.
Turn off the volume. But as the party chairman stated that, geopolitics is maybe not a very familiar term to many people. I mean, it's not a common word in the street for the common man. Could you explain it in a few words what it is?
It is actually true that our media is at this point using the term geopolitics very often, but it never explains what it really is. So my approach was to explain it to the common people, and it is actually a power-orientated part of foreign policy. So it is always about trying to establish spheres of interest, geographically defined spheres of interest, and that is the most important thing to know, that we are talking about foreign policy, and geopolitics is always a tool that is used in foreign policy. But in detail it is explained in the book, and is also explained where it comes from, where its origin is. It was always there. I mean, like Alexander the Great or Caesar, they all practiced geopolitics, but it was not defined then. And it started in 1896 with the German Friedrich Ratzel, that was the first one who started to talk about geographical politics, and that paved the way for people like Rudolf Kjellén, the Swedish guy, or Halford John Mackinder, very important person regarding the heartland theory, Nicholas J. Speakman, which we will definitely talk about later on, I guess. So that is in particular something that is, of course, the first chapter, because people need to know what we're actually talking about.
But just to clarify, would you say that geopolitics is a way of analyzing and understanding history and interstate affairs in terms of power?
Yeah, it's an analytical tool in the first place. But now it is, of course, used as a power tool to implement to implement the will of a certain state on a certain area.
Sure.
On others. It doesn't matter if the other if another state has a different interest.
Sure.
That is just something that is an obstacle, but it never stops the process.
What would your ideas, as someone writing a book on geopolitics, be to an argument which states that, well, in the old days politics was about power, now it's become about morals, because now we have progressed and we are more moral now than they were, for example, 50 or 100 years ago. What would you say to something like this?
Well, are we really talking about moral in geopolitics? No, we don't. If we talk about moral, I think we will talk about politics in our social, in our society, or society regarded politics. There we talk about moral, but I don't know if this kind of moral is really something that should be implemented into politics, because this again could lead to disturbance. Because I think politics should really concentrate on the issues at hand, trying to do the best for the people or for the country.
Sure. And we spoke about a little bit before we came here, so we're now recapitulating a little bit, but in terms of the geopolitical perspective, it's what we can call a realist perspective. It assumes that there are states, and these states have real interests in the world.
Yeah.
And also that in many cases, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Stefan, but there are conflicts between states. They have real conflicts of interest between them. Is this an assumption which you ascribe to?
Well, the reality is, of course, there's always a difference between the moralism and the realism of geopolitics. But I think it is always a power-orientated foreign policy that stands behind geopolitics. And as I said, it is about expansion of spheres of interest. But I think at this stage, the division of Europe might be the geopolitical interest that we should focus on.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, in the first chapters of your book, you talk a little bit about the current predicament of Europe in terms of geopolitics. Could you say a little bit about it? In what state are we now? I mean, if you draw a historical line, for example, from 1945 and forwards.
Well, we could talk about this, I think, for hours. But the point is that if I just focus on examples of Germany, then we could divide it between post-war situations and the destruction of nation that took place. And of course, this is that was. I think since the Second World War, Europe was always in a kind of a tense situation. Regarding the counterweight, that there was no counterweight to the Soviet Union, the creation of NATO that took place, the idea or the question why, for example, the United States were delivered to stay in Europe. This is always also something behind the question of NATO and the theory that goes along with it. As I said, Nicholas Spikeman was the person who made these assumptions for the United States, and he also predicted for it, by the way, that China would be a major player in the future, and that was 1942 that he predicted that. But then again, I think we should narrow the things a bit down, because I could go on for at least 20 minutes.
Sure, but if I say something that post-1945, Europe finds itself as an arena of geopolitical conflict between Soviet Russia and the US. You would agree to that?
Absolutely.
Yes. And what does that mean for Europe?
That means that it's actually, I would call it, a game ball. Yeah, it's a chess on the geopolitical chessboard, so to say. We have two superpowers, at least that was until the fall of the Iron Curtain. And then Russia had serious problems defining themselves as a superpower. And I think that the perestroika was a long-term geopolitical approach of the Soviet Union to catch up with the West, and that's also a theory I discuss in the book. But then again, we have these issues that are always. I mean, we have the USA as the superpower, and they have their personal interests at heart regarding Europe, and one of them is the Rimland theory, I call it, and I also Nicholas Spikeman defined it, so that they want to establish a belt around around Russia as the heartland, because they believe that if they control the Rimland, then they can, first of all, the heartland Russia cannot expand anymore, and they will be able to control, let's say, the world by that. And if we see how many military bases the United States have, 750 to be precise, all over the world, then I think there might be something to it.
Sure. So the idea is that post-1945, America gets a big stake in Europe. They stay, and they are first in a competition with the Soviet Union, which then collapses after a while and re-emerges as something different, as Russia. But Europe becomes an arena for geopolitical strife and conflict to a larger extent than before.
I think the Americans. First, we have to ask the question why NATO did not disappear after the fall of the Iron Curtain, because the Warsaw Pact did. The Russians kept their word. They moved out of Germany, for example, and then there was the discussion that is actually something that leads to the actual situation in the Ukraine, that the eastward expansion of NATO was something that the Americans said it would never happen. But unfortunately, it was just a verbal agreement, and it was never a treaty that was signed. But still, I found enough sources that support the fact that there was an agreement which the United States did not approve to.
So then you can see a continuity between the post-1945 and the post-fall of the Soviet Empire, and that is that the United States asserts its interests in Europe. And we also spoke a little bit about this before, Stefan. It may be difficult for some Norwegians to understand it, but there is no identity between the interests of the United States and of Europe. They are different things. Sometimes they may be the same, but many times they may be different.
I could make a. Let's talk about the United States and Poland then. It's a good example, because then you see the Poles do believe that they have very good friends now, that they are supported by the United States, and that they will. By that, they will finally have the possibility, let's say, to reach their own geopolitical goals. Because there's also a very interesting question who are the geopolitical players today in Europe? And of course, we already found out it is the United States, first of all. But who else? Great Britain? No, you don't see a lot about them. France? No. Germany? Definitely not. No, it's Poland. But what is interesting is that there's almost nothing, I'm pretty sure there's nothing in the Norwegian media about it. There's almost nothing in the German media about it. What are they doing? They are trying to be a major power. They're planning to be a major power in Eastern Europe. They are also they build up they want to build up the strongest army in Eastern Europe. And I talked with several people from several Eastern European countries, and they are concerned about that. The Poles also trying to establish a very old idea. It is called the intermarium. I mean, that was something that led to, if it would have been established in the 1930s, I'm very sure it would have led to war as well. Because the main idea is to separate Germany from Russia and vice versa. And this is again something they're trying to do. And when you following the announcements of the party PIS, then you will see on their webpage the first chapter, or the first how do you say that? The first issue they always talk about is Russia. Yeah? They harass them, they discredit them in every way possible. And the second one is Germany. Even though we didn't do anything bad at that point.
But you think geopolitically, in the European geopolitical game, Germany is totally...
Germany's out of the game.
Yeah, it's totally castrated.
Yeah, so to say. And that's the reason why I said that, why I make up this example, because Poland is at this point a very important player that no one has on his card, and that Poland is actually someone who hates Russia and is trying to do anything to let's say prolong this war with any kind of possibilities, and then we have this point where it might get ugly if they proceeding in this matter. The escalation could get definitely worse. Yes.
Sure, but let me follow up a little bit, because the picture you're drawing up now is that on the one hand you have the US, which have had for a long time interests in Europe, and they are their own interests. And on the other hand, you have the old powers, France, England, which are really not into the game anymore. They just obey orders from the US. And then you have some new powers like Poland. But what about the European Union, Stefan? What do you think about them as a geopolitical player?
Well, I don't have to say anything by myself. I think there is a very good quote from Brzezinski in this book, which says that, to sum this up, the United States do not care about Europe. They accept the European Union and the continent because they know they can't do it on their own. They can't design the world as they want to without Europe. But there is no partner, and this is exactly what Brzezinski said. There is no partner for the United States in Europe. They just need them. They use them, and they use them as they like to. And when they don't need someone anymore, they drop them.
Okay.
But to be frank, I mean, the fact is that we have to always ask. We can't say that the United States are evil in general. That would be a very bad approach. But it is of course important to know with what we're talking about, and who has the influence on the foreign policy of the United States, and that is important to know that these are the neocons that are really doing, let's say, the bad things, and the people, the realistic people in the United States, unfortunately, don't have the upper hand now. But this is also something that I do explain in the book in proper detail.
What would you say about Russia? What are the geostrategic interests of Russia when it comes to the European game?
At this point?
Yes.
I think Russia at this point is of course very disappointed about the actual behavior, about the agreements that were not kept. I mean, I always talk with a good friend of mine who's Russian, and he is also very, very good informed regarding politics. And I see that if, and this is the most important thing, if there would have been any kind of approach towards Russia, trying to find out what they really want, and I mean it's obvious what they want. They don't want the Ukraine in NATO. This is all they want.
So, but sometimes in Norwegian press you read the following: that Russia is on the verge of invading Europe. And
Ridiculous.
You think it's
absolutely
ridiculous?
They don't have the power. They don't have the material. I mean, we already saw how difficult it was for them to approach or how do you say that, to get into Ukraine, to keep their front lines. They had to withdraw again from certain areas, and what we all heard is that they had organizational problems. The communication was bad, and we could also ask the questions: why not 2014? Why waiting longer? Doing, because they were not capable. In 2014, they didn't have the material to take more than the Crimea. And that's why I said I think it is important to know that Russia was completely broke in 1985, 1986, after the Afghanistan war and all of that. That was actually geopolitically prolonged by the United States by supporting the Mujahideen.
Yes.
Yeah. But if the Americans do something like that, then it's okay.
So you totally reject the idea, which is sometimes certain in the Norwegian press, that Russia could and even would and is able to invade the West. That's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous in this way because they don't have the material to do so. What they want is they want to keep what they have at this point. And that's why they digged in, so to say. Yes. That's what you see. That's the reason why they didn't expand their front lines anymore. They stopped at a certain point. They fell back on several points. And now what we see is that the Ukraine approach is more difficult than the media gave credit to.
Why this bogeyman then? Why was Russia?
Because fear is obviously the best solution to make people obedient to certain ideas. I mean, it is the same with talking about the weapons deliveries. I mean, everybody who is against weapon deliveries to Ukraine is, especially in Eastern Europe. I was in Lithuania a couple of days ago, and everybody who's against this is a KGB agent. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. I mean, there's always just a lousy argument that comes around because they don't have any other arguments. What I think is that it is always obvious that if you deliver weapons, you do prolong the war. What does it mean? It means that people are dying. Innocent people are dying. And if there's another chance for freedom, why don't take it?
Sure. Should we look a little bit ahead? Now we're looking at history, 1945 forwards, but if we look a little bit at NATO, I don't know if you agree with this, but I assume you do so, but correct me if I'm wrong, that NATO, which was seen as a regional defensive military alliance, has developed into something else, a geostrategic tool of some kind.
Yes, a proxy force of the United States.
Yes.
Why do I say that? Because, as I already said, the NATO could have been disassembled after the fall of the Iron Curtain, as did the Warsaw Pact. And the approach of the Russian Federation was very friendly at that time. In particular, Putin held a very, very friendly speech in 2001 or 2002, I'm not sure about this, in the German parliament. And he was there with open arms, wanted to come closer to Europe, but there was no real response to that. And then again, the NATO, and as you have to be aware of the fact that NATO is the reason for the Americans to stay in Europe. If there's no NATO, there's no reason for the Americans to stay in Europe. So that was also the reason why they need NATO. So there has to be another idea, and the new idea was out of area missions. The first one was 1999. It was Yugoslavia, which is still very doubtful that it was in regard of international law. Then we had, in 2011, we had Libya. And I would say Libya was the most devastating thing that could happen to Europe, because after Gaddafi was gone, and he was the one saying that if Libya fell, if Libya is falling, then the door or the gate to Europe will be open.
Yeah.
And let me be frank, that is exactly what happened.
Prophetic words, indeed. But we agree then that the alliance with the US for Europe has a cost.
It has a cost.
Yeah, and if you could, I mean, probably many here are interested too, and if we use the example of Nord Stream, for example, could you say that, because you write about it?
Yes, I did. I was also talking about this subject in London last year, in October, before Seymour Hersh made this interesting reveal. And at that time, I already said that that I'm very, very confused about the fact that the first thing, I mean, I never read, sorry to say that, but I never read a lot about Norway or Norwegians in the German newspaper. But after that incident, suddenly Ivar Strømmen was all over the place,
yes.
Claiming that it was, of course, the Russians who blew up their own pipelines, so that they have a reason for not delivering gas to Europe, to Germany, which is ridiculous, of course. I mean, why should I shoot myself in the knee? Just say, okay, I don't want to walk anymore. I could say that just by saying I don't want to walk anymore. And what is also very intriguing is the fact that no one asked for another culprit. No one. I mean, no one has the guts, obviously by media or by the politicians, German politicians in particular, to ask, is there anyone else who might be interested in blowing up our pipelines? Well, and obviously there is a confession, I would call it a confession, of Biden, of the President Biden and of Victoria Nuland in the media. You can download it on YouTube, you can watch it all over again. Mr. Biden said, after he got the question from a reporter, what would he do about the Nord Stream pipelines? And he said, when the Russians attack Ukraine, there will be no Nord Stream 2 anymore. And then the reporter asked, how do you want to do that? I mean, it's German jurisdiction. Well, we will find a way. How much more do you want to talk about it? I mean, Victoria Nuland also underlined that fact. And after this incident, she also said to an American, to U.S. senator, that she agrees with his opinion that it is a good thing that Nord Stream 2 is just a pile of metal on the bottom of the ocean. So how much more do you need, at least to say, all right, there is another culprit here, and how possible is it?
Sure.
Yeah. And then again, then again you have these secret services like the BND, the German Secret Service, coming up with this glorious idea that Ukrainians and some Poles did it in a yard, just carrying around 500 kilos of explosive and the material to dive 80 meters. And then again, all right, okay, if you say so, then we all do believe what you say.
But do you think that the debate in Germany, has that been realistic or has it been a cover?
The official debate.
The official debate.
The official debate is a cover. I wouldn't say a cover-up, but it is more like a sorry excuse of a debate. Yeah, because there was no party in the German Parliament who asked for an investigation, indeed, except for the AFD, and that is something that is rather rather confusing because the AFD is not even the biggest opposition party at that point. The biggest opposition party is the Christian Democratic Union, the CDU, but no one asked about it.
And just to make the point that in Norway, no member of any party asked formal questions in the National Assembly here. So there are questions which are unanswered. We can say that.
Yeah, that is true.
So if you agree then with the idea that it was not the Russians which blew up the...
I'm very sure it was not the Russians,
yes. But then, what does that mean for the cost of the alliance with the US?
Well, honestly, I think I said something similar already in my speech last year, and I think I wrote the same in my article that came afterwards. I am very convinced that if you have an alliance, an allied who is capable of doing such a thing to the allies, then you don't need any ally. I mean, this is just ridiculous to believe that something can go on such a level if you can't trust. I mean, there is no trust anymore. If the AFD would come to power and would be responsible for the governance and for the government, and you have to ask, do we get an honest answer or not? And if they start playing around, then I'm sorry, but then we can't leave you people here on our soil. Then we have to close down Rammstein, in fact.
But let's look forward. Time passes very quickly, so I think we'll use about 10 more minutes, and then we'll open for questions, Stefan. But what does this mean in terms of the future of geopolitics in Europe? I mean, you make the distinction between, on the one hand, you have the European Union.
Yeah.
And that's something very different than the nation states of Europe. That's totally different.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what is the future for Europe in terms of geopolitics?
I would say that we have a very, very dangerous situation at hand at this point, because anything can happen. Because I don't see any particular attempt that someone from the West, but at this point the Russians are not interested either, to release the pressure of this situation. I mean, we hear every week there is someone else coming, oh yeah, now we bring up Taurus tactical rockets, and then we bring up this, and then again you hear other announcements from the Ukrainians that they want every inch of their territory back. And of course, I mean, we don't talk about right or wrong in this.
No.
At this point, we're just talking about realistic assumptions. And when I say this is completely unrealistic, but I think a solution would be a pacification of the central conflict points that we have. And if this does not happen soon, then there's of course the point that we have a disbalance between the troops of the Ukraine and the troops that we have on the Russian side. So my prediction is that I mentioned in the book that Ukrainians will one day, they don't have any troops anymore. The West can deliver as much weapons as they like, but if there's no one to operate them, what do you do? So there are only two options: peace talks, or what we hear sometimes on the low profile, that they will use NATO soldiers, like from Poland, like from Lithuania, and this could be a very, very dangerous development, because this is actually the involvement that the Russians always criticize, and they say if NATO takes place and obvious and is involved in real fights, then then the gloves are off, so to say.
I I have a further question, which I have not announced to you before, but I hope that you can answer for the general benefit of all those who have come today. That if you were to characterize the geopolitical situation or the geopolitical understanding of your own political party, the AFD, do they understand what you're talking about? Is this reflected in their policies?
Well, it is a delicate question.
Yes.
Partially.
Yes.
I mean, it's like in your party, we talked earlier, and you said that there is a minority in your party that says weapons deliveries are a good thing.
Yes.
And you remember my answer to that? I said, this is you can easily talk about weapons delivery if you're not involved. If you don't have to fight the war, then it's easy to say, yeah, give them weapons, let's go on. But if your relatives are dying there, then you think at least twice about this. And it is the same in the AFD, but it is the other way around. We say, because we are also very small amount of people that support weapons delivery, but we have the majority says, okay, we lost our good relations to Russia because of sanctions that took place that don't make any sense. They don't have any effect. Russia's economy is blooming, still is just working better than ours at this point because we lost billions in euros of contracts. So yeah, I mean, we have a serious problem.
Exactly.
And I think our party tries to solve this also with their approach to other parties in the parliament. But we will, of course, as he already mentioned, they ignore us as well. Yeah, the only thing that because they don't have any arguments against us. But the only solution is to ignore us or to call us by names. Which I won't repeat here. But the elections will coming up. They are coming up next year. European Parliament, and we have Bavaria in October, and the polls are going through the roof, at least from our perspective.
22%, 21%.
23 at this point now, and yeah. But what is very intriguing is that the polls in Western Germany, we have 21% in Saarland. I don't know. Yeah. So it's amazing.
And when you mention this, I have to come with a different question. When we spoke about this as well earlier, that, for example, the respected magazine Der Spiegel had a recent editorial, I think it's 2 or 3 days ago, where they encouraged the constitutional courts in Germany to consider banning the AFD. What is your response?
Well, they tried before and they will fail again. That is the short answer, because this is not the NPD, not the national party that we had years ago, where actually almost every second person was paid by the Secret Service. So they are always it's like a dog barking up on a tree, and they are scared. They are scared of us because now we are approaching percentages that could be a danger, and the people from the Christian Democrats, they are already on the local level. They are already considering working together with us. Even though that might be dangerous for their career in this party, but I mean, this is the point which is important to reach. People are realizing in Germany that they got screwed for decades by the old parties, and this is this state of mind we have to reach all over Europe. And then we are turning things to the better, I would say.
Yes. And by Europe you mean the individual states?
Of course.
The European Union.
Of course. What else?
Sure. I could also state before we start taking questions that tomorrow we will have another talk. and that talk will deal specifically with demographics, the changing demographics of Europe, which will also take place here at 12 o'clock noon tomorrow.
Oh, that early?
Yes, so we have to get up early tomorrow, Stefan.
All right.
Should we open for questions?
Sure, of course.
And you are able to answer questions regarding the book and other issues about the AFD or Germany or anything. I can serve a little bit as master of ceremonies and walk around with the microphone.
Go ahead.
You first there, and I'll come here afterwards. Det er anledning til å stille spørsmål på norsk eller engelsk eller tysk. If someone asks a question in Norwegian, I will translate it.
It would be nice.
Øyvind, kan vi filme den med noen som ikke... Ok, da gjør vi ikke.
Do we need it?
I don't think we need
Kan du snakke med høyst hjemme?
Yeah. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I was reminded of a quote I heard before. Keep the Russians out, the Americans in, and the Germans down.
Yeah, I remember that one. I can't exactly tell you from whom it was. It's because it is written in the book, but I can't remember names.
Secretary General Lord Ishmael.
Ishmael, exactly. Now, the moment you said it, there it is. Yeah, exactly. That was actually his whole idea about NATO and about his career. He based his whole career on this sentence.
I feel like it sums up your discussion today.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And I'm wondering what reflections do you have? Is this because this was a historical perspective on how NATO's relation to Germany would be as well. It seems like it's fulfilling itself again.
In regard to Germany,
to the Nord Stream, to your ideas about how you run your electrical grid. It seems like all the ideas coming out of Germany are bad ideas that we're implementing.
Well, yeah. How can I say that? I mean, we had the re-education after the war. Then we had the '68 movement that was rather that had a communist touch, so to say. So I'm completely agreeing with you that all the bad things, or most, not all the bad things, because we're not the Hungarians, but that was a joke again because they are blamed to be the bad ones as well. I had a very good talk with an Hungarian ambassador, and he's also smiling about the fact that the Hungarians are always the bad boys in Europe. But regarding Germany, it is unfortunate that a lot of trash is coming from German politicians, yeah, I have no excuse for that, except bad education. So if you, I don't know what else you would like to know about this, but
I just think it's interesting that the NATO as an organization was founded on this idea of keeping Germany down, and it seems like they continue.
And now they are supporting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a bit lunatic. But German policy at this point is not. You can't describe it in any different way than in complete lunatic. There's. I mean, look at Baerbock. Look at Habeck. I mean, there's not a straight sentence coming out of their mouths that makes any sense. And these people are foreign minister and the minister for economy in Germany, with a BHP of 6.6 billion. So what? I mean, this is ludicrousy, absolutely. And it's the only thing you can do is laugh about it, because otherwise you cry all day long, and it's not good at all.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and I've already bought your book. I wonder if you take the situation in Ukraine as it is now, and if you should if you should look before the First or the Second World War, if there is a similar situation today, which one would you pick, First or Second World War?
I would say second.
Yeah. I believe it's more like the first, because at the First World War you had all the alliances were woven together, and you had two small countries who attacked each other, or Austria and Serbia. and that draw the whole alliance into the war. And nobody thought it would be this grave. Nobody thought it would be a world war. And I'm afraid that because we are in the NATO alliance, then we are all doomed to do what America say. And let's say that you said Poland is attacking Belarus, for instance.
Yeah, but that's the reason why I say it is a bit more like the Second World War, because Poland is doing it again. They are again threatening a bigger opponent, and they believe they can beat it.
I see.
That is very delicate, actually. But when you were mentioning NATO and the obligation to change or to do whatever they want to, no, it does not. Check out Article 5.
Yeah.
As it deems necessary. All actions as it deems necessary.
Yeah.
So every nation can decide very much on its own what they are going to do to re-establish peace in the area of the North Atlantic Treaty. And I'm very sure, especially regarding the situation with the military material we already gave away, I can assure you Germany is not capable to defend itself at this point. And I talked with the British, and the generals there, they do say the same. They can't defend themselves anymore. And there was a question from the Prime Minister of Estonia. She asked the British general what would happen if Russia would attack the Baltic states, and his first answer was, well, first of all, we would withdraw into the depth of Europe, reconsider what we will do, and then we will have a counterattack. And of course, the response was, yeah, and what do you think what will be left of the Baltic states afterwards? But then again, they changed their ideas, and they say, okay, we build up the forces. They brought in some more British soldiers. They push the numbers on the German brigade. But then again, all of this means a full-scale war.
Yeah.
And this is actually what we should try to avoid.
Exactly why I didn't look upon the Second World War and thought that was similar. Sorry.
No problem.
I
problems.
don't think Putin really is Hitler, and I think Hitler had both the army and the resources, and he had the plan to conquer all of Europe, and I don't think Putin had that.
Exactly, I agree with you.
But a little question. If they decide that Norway was part of this Nord Stream, what would England do to Norway?
England?
No, I mean Germany, sorry.
Well, at this point I would say it is a hypothetical question. But then again, I would say it is something that needs to be discussed or investigated. I mean, the truth must be discussed, because how do you want to trust an ally if you have this kind of elephant in the room? Yeah, I mean, it's impossible. But from my personal perspective, as I said, it is unfortunate, but it is again U.S. geopolitics, and I'm pretty sure the United States have lots of very convincing facts to convince Norway to do whatever they have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. May I sit? I recently heard about Victoria Nuland, and you mentioned her, and that she is a very powerful player in this game.
She is.
And we don't rarely hear about her. But who do you think is behind her and Biden?
Behind her, behind Biden, I just mentioned the neocons. Yeah? Victoria Nuland is a full-scale neocon, and her husband Robert Kagan as well. So that fits there, perfectly fit together.
Can you tell me more about neocons?
Well, actually, yes, but you can also read it in my book. Well, the thing is that you have to understand where the neocons are coming from. And it's very interesting to see that they were actually liberal hawks That's what they call themselves. And they were founded in the mid-60s, late 60s, and they had a very interventionistic and expansionist foreign policy from the very beginning. They were against peace talks in any way. They wanted to prolong the Vietnam War and stuff like that. So, but that is one thing. But I think what is most important is that they became globalists, I would say. Yeah, their intentions are globalistic. But when you see that some of their founders were Trotskyists, then it gets interesting. Because then we see that probably globalism and communism are actually the two sides of the same coin or the same medal. But it is the Americans, they use, especially, I mean, like Kissinger was inspired by the neocons. They support the neocons, Rumsfeld, George W. Bush, and all these people. So, I mean, we see, especially at that time, since George W. Bush, this aggressive expansionist and interventionistic foreign policy of the United States, and how many wars came there. And I once read it that they just, especially regarding the Far East, they just did the war because they can. It was at some points not even a reason for it. And we see like Colin Powell with his little, how do you say that? The
presentation of evidence.
This presentation of evidence.
Yes.
Yeah, you remember that?
Yes.
Oh, what was it? Milzbrand. I don't know.
Anthrax.
Anthrax.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the thing. He said before he died, a couple of years earlier, before, that it was the worst part of his career, the lowest point he reached. So he figured out he lied, and he was. And you see, and this is just one little brick that you can put together to show that the neocons and the foreign policy they are trying to be the dominant power, full stop, and there is no one beside them, and they don't want anyone, neither the Chinese nor the Russians or anyone else, to be equal with them.
Thank you. Kjell-Arne Thomas.
Yeah. Could you elaborate a little bit about the outlook for Europe's economy, especially regarding to the energy situation, and also the BRICS and the new currency?
Well, the BRICS states are another matter, I would say, but if you focus on Europe, at this point, we can say we are quite screwed. Yeah, I mean, especially Germany shot itself in the knee, or both knees, I would say, because we followed the incompetent ideas of our green leaders, which led to the fact that we lost all contracts with the Russians. There's no gas coming through the pipelines, even if they were there, however. But that was a major hit to the German economy. We lost billions of euros, and I can't speak for other nations. I don't know what kind of effect it had on Norwegian economy, but at least you, what a coincidence, established a new pipeline to Poland. Yeah, all coincidences.
I have a follow-up about that. The uranium and Niger problem now. That's going to impact France mostly, but also some German nuclear power plants.
Power plants?
Yeah.
Well, don't worry about power plants anymore in Germany, because we shut them down anyway, because it's a green idea. Yeah. No nuclear power plants in Germany anymore, and if the green ideas go on, then I'm pretty sure we will start making fire again with stones.
Yeah.
Pretty sure of that.
Geir and Jacobsen, and afterwards we have time for a couple more questions. Please.
This is a good lesson, Stefan.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are talking about this all day, and we try to gather information about what's really happening. Because I think it's as a business manager for many years, I'm very occupied about the macro politics and how it's really orchestrated. Because we usually tend to fall into micro politics, and we are dealing with some symptoms or just small parts of the problem. And if we eliminate it or solve it, then the problem won't disappear, because someone is pulling the strings somewhere. It's a game going on, and it's probably one force that really has the total overview, and then it's a lot of naive, useful idiots also playing in it, who really don't know what they're doing. And I wonder, you talk about the neocons, and I'm not really sure who they are, but surely that might be the core of it. And I wonder, what do they really aim at? What do they see as the end station for this conflict that's going on, and all the corresponding crises and conflicts that in some way or another plays a role in this game? It's all adding up. Because it's a game of smoke and mirrors. You don't. What you really see is not really what it is, usually. And there's a lot of false flag operations, and that's really confusing. Like we saw in Syria, we saw false flag because they really wanted to take down Assad, and they financed the ISIS. I can say that in this forum. I'm very sure they did.
Well, they financed the Mujahideen to prolong the war in Afghanistan with the Russians, so yeah.
Yeah, they did. And they kept their wings over ISIS because Russia was not allowed to take out ISIS because he got an open threat of war from Barack Obama. If Putin took out ISIS, the US would go after Russia. And they will have a war, at least in the Middle East, because of that. And then we saw these false flag operations. Like every time Assad almost had beaten ISIS, he just got the bright idea to gas some of his own civilians. That's fantastic. What a genius. And it was his work. It was someone else. And we see it time after time. I say, this is a false flag, this is a false flag, this is a false flag. Because it's a genius way to win a war, to make the opponent look like an evil bastard. And then you have the whole world with you. So this is really complicated. It's not a war like we're used to. It's just extremely complicated. And my final question is, what do you see as the final answer to this? Because the war in Ukraine and some other crises and stuff will just keep on. And where do they see themselves in the end? What's the final target? Because
their final target. Well, first of all, of course, world dominance. That is the idea of the neocons.
Yes.
And they if you closely observe their foreign policy, then you will see that it is always focused on the fact that they want to expand the influence, the sphere of influence of the Americans in every way, in everywhere. Yeah? But I think the sorry to say it, I mean, I'm almost agree to all of this, but the question is always with false flag operations. They are called false flag operations, and mostly you don't know who really did it. Yeah?
That's right.
This is also an example in my book about the Maidan. in 2014. It depends where you are. If I'm in the Baltic states, I will hear, oh, of course it's the Russians, the bloody Russians who did it. And if I'm the further I'm coming to the west, it's the fucking CIA. Yeah. So it's so different from any perspective, because this is why we are why we should be more neutral in our own point of view. We should not take sides that easily. And this is why I wrote this book. I don't want to take a side. This is a German view, and I'm representing German interests, at least from my perspective. Perspective, yes, indeed, again, a little bit one side. No, but at least what I'm trying is talking about what the Americans, what NATO did wrong, and what the Russians did wrong. And so that my humble try is to say, okay, what could have been done to prevent this war in the first place? Because I'm so sure we could have prevented this war from the before it even started, if we would just found some solutions for geopolitical interests, different geopolitical interests in the Ukraine.
Absolutely. I could talk
Yeah, hours and hours.
We are all very fascinated about the success of the AFD in Germany, watching the growth and the future potential now. And of course, then the question will be for us in Norway and other countries, what part of that success might be possible to transfer to other countries? What is transferable? What can be copied? What can be imitated? Or what is uniquely special to the contemporary situation in Germany and the historical situation in Germany, if even trying to copy the path that you have gone and continue to go, if that's even a feasible way and a possible way, or if it's more about picking up some of the gems of what you have discovered along your road, or a wholesale copying of your concept. That would be very interesting.
Well, I could make it short. I would say if it is possible in Germany, it's possible everywhere. I mean, Germans are a little bit, how do you say that in English? They are restricted in their whole behavior. They have this blockade, because when you grow up being the responsible for all bad things that happened in the world, I'm a little bit exaggerating.
Just a little.
Just a little. But then, of course, that has an influence on your psyche. But luckily not on everyone. I'm one of the lucky ones, I would say. So, indeed, everything is possible, of course, in Norway. What I think is very important, and I had this similar question in Lithuania just last week, the most important thing is that you stick together, that you work together, and what is more important is that we, as the Europeans, as the real Europeans, work together. Because when the people in Europe see that we are capable of talking or speaking with one language, yeah, and everybody sees, well, I mean, they have the same opinion in Norway, they have the same opinion in Lithuania, and they have the same opinion down there in Austria and everywhere else. Then these people can't be completely stupid. They can't be the bad guys. They can't be the racists or the whatever they call us, because it is just common sense. We want to protect what is ours, what is our beloved country, yeah, our nation, our culture, and this is our goddamn right, because it is our country. It is our continent. But you can do anything. You just have to work together.
I wonder one thing, which media can you trust?
Which media?
Yeah, because my question is, I have different channels. And I used SafeChat, and we heard about President Trump. He went out and said, well, if I was the president today, it wouldn't be a war in Ukraine and Russia. So you cannot trust. And about the pipeline, everything came straight away on Twitter and SafeChat, but not in our legal media in Norway or around Europe. So what is happening?
Well, they all obey to their government. Yeah, in Germany it's called gleichgeschaltet. Yeah.
Make it uniform.
Yeah, but you can also say it in Norwegian.
Yeah. Ensparting og sånt.
Yeah. So this is the problem with the media today. It doesn't matter if we are in Germany, if we are in Norway, it doesn't matter. It's fascinating on one hand, yeah, to see how straight they are constructed in giving away a certain point of view, and on the other hand, it is of course frightening, because whom can you trust? And in Germany, we have 2 or 3 newspapers that are close to patriotic thinking. So these, of course, as the AFD, speaking for the AFD, we can trust and we do trust. And they never write. They write neutral. They write from a patriotic point of view. So this is one thing. But then, of course, we have the alternative media. And this is, I think, our only option we have at this point. We have alternative media in Lithuania, very successful. We have alternative media in Germany, obviously also in Norway. Exactly. So yeah, this is what we have to. And again, at that point, we have to work to build up these structures. But then again, we have to connect them with each other. So German alternative media should exchange information as quickly as possible with anyone who's interested in it. And of course, the best possibility to do so is in English. But I'm very convinced that if we continue to, or at least if we start to work closer together, yeah, and on all levels possible, yeah, that could be something that might be very, very scary for them.
Can I ask you quickly? You said there were 2 newspapers in Germany that you almost can trust. What's the name of them?
Junge Freiheit and Preußische Allgemeine.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I want
If
to
not,
follow
we'll
up.
move
But
on.
there are also some magazines, like
Because
Kompakt or Zurzeit in Austria.
Okay, thank you.
Because you see the similar thing happen with Russia when they went into Afghanistan. And if they could take Afghanistan, they would go into Pakistan to have a marine base down in Pakistan.
That is an assumption.
Yeah, but they have done it the same now with Ukraine, with the harbor there.
I think these are 2 different things.
Yeah, but it's a similar thing they have.
I think the Ukraine is something you cannot compare to anything else, because the Ukraine is I would say, I would call it the origin of the Russian soul, of the Russian people. And it started 865 after Christ with the Kiev Rus. And so you can't definitely not compare these two issues. But then again,
Read the book.
read the book.
We have one further question, Tore, and afterwards Geir Jacobsen will say a few words and then we'll close for this evening. But we hope to see you again tomorrow at 12 o'clock noon here. Tore, vær så god.
Thanks. Since you're in Norway, I want to bring it back to energy. So do you have any thoughts on how is the situation in Nigeria affecting the nuclear supplies?
Well, that is something You know, I'm not a politician. I'm not a real politician. So I'm not blabbering about something I have actually not a clue about. So I was on the road for at least 2 weeks now. You could imagine that I didn't have much time to get into the subject of Niger, Nigeria. But the thing is, I mean, obviously there are also some other interests at hand, because the Americans don't interfere, the French don't do what they could actually do. But regarding energy supply, I'm sorry, that is out of my expertise.
Thank you. Could I just say a couple of words, Kate, and then I'll leave it to you. That one thing that our viewers and the audience tonight should think about is what are the national key interests of Norway. Norgesdemokratene is a party which has the slogan that we put Norway first, and we should be interested in our interests, and we should judge all other questions from that point of view. I think you agree to that, and with those words, Geir Jacobsen, will you say some few words and then we'll finish?
Yes, we can finish. Thank you so much, Stefan.
I thank you.
It's very interesting, and I look forward to elaborate cooperation. I really do, because we need to broaden our perspective in Norway. We have this synchronized media that's they are worthless as an information supply. So we need to exchange experience and information and make up our own opinions. So I very much like to follow that track. When it comes to nuclear supply, so I think we have enough nuclear weapons, at least. So I don't think we need any more warheads, but maybe for some energy for peaceful things like the nuclear power plants and stuff. But I think maybe first of all the West now, just to try to close the discussion, is picking on a snake. I'm not with or against anyone like you are. I try to be neutral. I try to make peace somewhere, find a solution. Also, when it comes to Ukraine. We all know in Norgesdemokratene we have a special point of view when it comes to the Ukraine conflict, which has been criticized, but now gain more and more terrain. And that is that we want a peaceful solution. We want to get all the facts on the table. We want to know who's pulling which strings. And we really can't choose a side because we don't know, like you say. Yeah. But now I see the naive West piloted by someone who knows what they're doing. They're picking on a snake, like Russia, if you can call it a snake, which can be very dangerous, but we'll probably beat it as we see it. But this snake carries a suicide belt, so we really can't beat it. So where do they really want to go? I don't know, but that will be to see. And I think we're a bit on that way now to maybe to dig up what finally will be. So until then, until we find that final solution, and maybe it blows up in our face before we know.
Yes, it's a snake with a red button. Huh?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So until then, we'll take that session tomorrow. I look forward to that as well. I hope you all will attend that too, and maybe more people will come and attend, because this is really very interesting. Just spread the word. And now we close for today. And buy the book.
It's possible to buy the book. Stefan is even as generous as to sign it for those who buy it.
So it looks very interesting. I just went through it very quickly, and it's exactly as compact and to the point as I like it. so I can recommend it. Now we spread a little for dinner and whatever we are going to do, and we are sleeping everywhere. So just have a good evening and a good night, and see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Dankeschön. What's your own for book? How does it take with the book?
What is it? What is it in krona?
Yeah, 283. Yeah. Till that? Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. I have been a lot of times in Germany, and I have almost Christmas.
Need your signature.
Of course.
Du tänker en waiting list? Ja. Det var ingen ska vara bra. Det känns ju många håll faktiskt. Det är det. Jag såg att det var en himmel.